going on, everyone? I'm Nick with B&H, and we are live here at the B&H Superstore here in New York City, and today we're here to talk all about the brand new, just announced Canon EOS R6 Mark III. And there is a lot to go over with this camera, but fortunately we have an amazing panel to help us do just that, kind of from both an experiential and a technical standpoint. So real quick, Vanessa, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Vanessa Joy. I am a Canon Explorer of Light and an active photographer. I focus on weddings, portrait, commercial. Oh, and I'm a YouTuber as well.
Is that a recent thing, or have you been like doing that?
6 years now. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, lots of
And then
YouTube.
also recent sports photographer, you were saying
Yes,
a little
recent
bit?
sports, a little bit of football.
Amazing. And Drew.
Hi everyone, I'm Drew MacCallum. I'm the Senior Manager of Product Planning at Canon USA, here to help introduce the new R6 Mark III to B&H and to the market. My job's to take that feedback, work with people like Vanessa, get that feedback, and tell Japan what it is you guys want next. So here we are with the R6 Mark III. Ready to help you out with it.
So yes, please direct all questions and hot takes to Drew specifically. We'll pass his email out at the end of the live stream, and I'm sure you would love that.
I'd love it, thanks.
But in all honesty, for those of you who are watching live in the chat, please drop any questions that you have. We're going to try to address them kind of as the live stream goes on. And then anything we don't kind of work into the conversation, we'll try to address at the end as well. So please let us know what your questions are. But Drew, I will chat with you first. Usually the standard spiel for this is for those of you watching live right now who maybe just skimmed the headlines or the SparkNotes version, kind of give us the elevator pitch of the R6 Mark III. What's new with it? Who is it for? What are the highlights?
Right, so we introduced this at 1 a.m., so some people may not have quite caught all of the headlines, and maybe they're a little groggy from having to be awake so early. But realistically, the R6 Mark III is the next generation of our R6 series. R6 II stays in the lineup, but the R6 III elevates that next level of R6 experience. You've got a 32.5 megapixel sensor, so we've upped the resolution by 34%. You've got a very fast shutter here at 40 frames per second electronic, 12 frames per second mechanical. Realistically, upping the resolution, the functionality, the user interface, things like that to help really take that photography and video experience to the next level. Our video experiences here are quite a bit improved. We've gone to a 7K 60 type resolution. You really can push this out there with video, stills, YouTube, you name it. It's got a lot going on. We could sit here for hours going through an 82-page spec note. We're not going to do that, though.
Oh, man, a lot of people disappointed with that. So kind of right off the bat, I think it's important to confirm that the R6 II is still sitting in the lineup.
Absolutely.
This is now an additional sort of step up for that.
Exactly. Gives us more breadth in the lineup. So if someone is really maybe a RP owner, or maybe they have a DSLR, or maybe a crop sensor body, and they want to get into something, the R6 II might still be that price point that they're really leaning towards. They want a stellar camera, and again, the R6 II is a stellar camera.
Yeah.
R6 III just takes it up the next notch for those that are looking for that next level of improvement and capability.
Awesome. And Vanessa, I know obviously you are very experienced with Canon. In fact, you were with us for the R5 II live stream last year.
Yeah.
But for those of you who maybe don't know your work, I know you kind of let us know like what your expertise is, but what are you kind of looking for in a camera? And specifically, I know the R6 III, you did get some hands-on time beforehand. And how did that kind of work with what your natural workflow is?
Yeah, I mean, my natural workflow is I'm always working with people. So one of the things I loved about this camera, aside from super fast autofocus, like you just cannot miss with these cameras, but having the ability to register faces is something I really love in my R5 II and my R1, and now being able to do it in this camera is even better. It's just one of those things working with weddings, for example. Crowded dance floors, a lot of people, a lot of faces, and sometimes actually with sports as well, I'm just like kind of holding up the camera and like, hoping that it focuses, and it will focus, but now it'll focus on the MVP of that shot every single time. So I love that. And then for me, the 32.5 megapixels, like Goldilocks sweet spot right there between the 24 of the R6 II and the 45 of the R5 II. So
you touched on like 5 things.
I'm sorry.
No.
I'm sorry. I'm so excited.
No, you did it perfectly. I'm like, oh my God, we got to pace ourselves though, because the first thing I do kind of want to talk about is the sensor in the sky.
Yeah.
You called it Goldilocks. It sits between the 24 megapixel sensor on the R6 II and the 45 on like the R5 II. Now, I know there's a lot of curiosity over the fact that the C50 came out recently and also has 32.5 megapixel sensor. It's not. Is it quite the same sensor? Is it its own thing on this guy?
Well, that's the magic of how Canon works, and we can make our own sensors, right? So the sensor is the same architecturally. However, when you look at the read, how we interpret that data for the C50 versus the R6 III, they're fine-tuned specifically for each other. One is a photo camera that does extremely well doing video. The other is a video-dedicated camera that does a pretty darn good job with stills as well. But we are fine-tuned for each sensor differently. So you can get a few differences, like different dynamic range and dual gain ISO on a C50 versus the R6 III doesn't have that functionality. So they're the same, but different.
Perfectly succinct answer.
Yeah.
So also talking about that 32 megapixel sensor, actually this might be a better question for you, Vanessa, as well, but I'm curious both your perspectives. Who is the 32 megapixel sensor for in terms of a shooting situation compared to the 24 that you're getting in the R6 II versus the 45? You were talking about a little bit earlier, Vanessa, where sometimes 45 megapixels is just a little bit too much.
Yeah.
It's always nice to have tons of resolution, but sometimes you maybe hit a point of diminishing returns with like file sizes or maximum burst rates. So for you, do you actually like this as a sweet spot, or were you missing like a larger sensor sometimes?
It is a sweet spot for me. So for example, with the R6 II, which I have and I photograph with all the time, I don't have as much freedom to be able to crop. And one of the things I really enjoy doing is changing my aspect ratio on the camera to a 1:6 crop. So I'm cropping in camera so that later when my editors are looking at it, they don't know what I want to crop or not crop, and I can just do it myself. So that's something I was able to do on the R5 II with 45 megapixels. But just with that camera, at weddings specifically, I found that it was just overkill for like the reception. I'm taking thousands of photos of, people dancing around. You just don't need, 45 megapixels of essentially blackmail at the end of a wedding reception. 32 is like a sweet spot because, again, 24 didn't give me as much cropping room. So, yeah, it's right there. I will say for my commercial work, where I know the work's going on billboards, I will probably stick with the R5 II. And then if I'm thinking about more the sports side and wanting to shoot really fast, I think you'll know the stat, of course, but this camera allows you to shoot 320 frames, was it, at like all at once without letting up on the shutter button? Something along those lines.
It's a great question,
It's just like a really high amount, so like I can transfer it into sports as well because, again, it's not that high of a megapixel count.
Yeah, well, let's say for the sensor itself, we'll get back to the frame for the burst here in a second, but the sensor itself, if you go back just a few years, I'll call 5D4, which was a 30 megapixel sensor. That was the de facto wedding portrait
that was
event
the best
camera.
That
was the resolution. There was like, that's what I want.
Still see people holding onto that.
Still see people hanging onto it. It's one of those resolutions that Goldilocks, sweet spot, however you want to phrase it. I think it fits so many people's ability to handle in post. Right? It's a great level for cropping. We're doing 9-foot wide prints with a 24 megapixel R1 or R6 II. You can really go big with prints today.
Yeah.
Cropping in with a 32, you've still got enough punch. It's really that sweet spot for those. Now, going to your burst question, now that is the difference between the R6 II and R6 III is we now have the CF Express card on here, and we can do both RAW and JPEG, 150 RAW plus JPEG images in a burst. JPEG, you're basically going to be almost unlimited if you want to shoot JPEGs and
which with sports you do.
In sports you do, absolutely.
Well, and that is the nice thing about the R6 III in that even though you're getting a larger megapixel sensor, it has the exact same performance as the R6 II in terms of maximum burst rates, in terms of, correct?
Well, this is going to give you more. This is actually twice the amount of images in a burst than you had on the R6 II because the buffer just wasn't quite as big, and the cards were SD cards, so didn't quite have the same buffer in there. You've got a lot more buffer in here, even though you have a higher resolution sensor.
Wow. And then we'll jump to video a little bit later, but the CF Express card also enables the RAW recording options for the OpenGate stuff. Before we go too far away from the sensor, we have had some questions come in already, and I'll throw you the softball one first, because I think I know the answer to this one, but I'll have you do it. First one is OpenGate only at 7K?
OpenGate is, well, you get OpenGate 7K. RAW, you can do OpenGate 7K 30.
Yeah.
So yeah, I believe only at 7K. But
'Cause
that gives you the ability to give you that 4K resolution and that 16 by 9 that ratio for
Yes,
for that
it's just
crop.
it's
You want
capturing
that. You want
every
all
pixel,
of that resolution.
Yeah. Right.
And then the more specific question is, I see the username is a bunch of letters and numbers in a row, so I won't try to read it out. But what is the sensor speed readout? Do we know an exact number?
We don't really publish sensor readout speeds.
Okay.
One thing, if you're especially looking at the video side of things, that readout could be very different based on your resolution and compression settings. So we really don't give you a sensor speed spec, if you will.
Gotcha. Now, we've spoken a lot about kind of where this sits between like an R6 II, and I should also say, if you're working primarily in like web deliverables, 24 megapixels is still great, and the R6 II is still a very great affordable option for that. But we should note there are other improvements over the R6 II beyond just the increase in megapixels. I know, and I know you can speak to this more specifically, but I know certain things like flash sync speed is a little bit faster on the R6 III versus 2.
Right.
But then also the autofocusing system. I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit, kind of where the differences are and where that sits, especially compared to some of the higher end.
Well, that's a really good one because what you're seeing is a lot of functionality from the R1 and R5 II trickle right down into the R6 series now. With the R6 III, you now pick up the exact same AF system menu style and selectable AF areas that we have in the R5 II and R1. So meaning you have your all area zones, you have your spot, your single point, your surround, your brackets that you can select and save, and then you have your 3 locked position icons where if you have a single point in the center you want to lock in, you can just say, I want a single point, no tracking, no nothing, and it's right there. That has trickled right down from the 5D2 and R1, so that system is here. We don't have the digic accelerator in this camera that we have in the R5 II and R1, meaning you don't get the sports specific functionality such as a soccer, volleyball, and wow, I just completely lost the third one on that one. But yeah,
20 minutes later, it'll
20
come
minutes
back
later,
to
it'll
you.
come back to me.
Yes.
But yeah, we don't have that accelerator. But the autofocus system here is absolutely insane.
Well, the is it the subject detect? No, sorry, face priority. Is that the name of the
Face
feature?
priority, well, that's a different thing. Face priority is one thing, so that we can actually take
I was
a
about to veer
picture.
into another subject, but I
no.
wanted to make sure you hit that.
Action
before.
priority was the topic I was
Yes.
talking about. Yes.
And that is enabled by the digic accelerator,
Correct.
which your R5 II and R1
Correct.
have, but not this. But what I was going to say was I did get hands-on time with the R1, and that was my first experience with that face priority mode, which was very helpful. And I was curious because I've never shot a wedding. Is that something that you have or would use where you could essentially, so if you don't know the feature, you can essentially take a picture of someone's face and prioritize them so that if there's multiple subjects in the frame, it will default to one person and then there's a secondary choice and a third choice. Have you ever used that in like a wedding, let's say, where it's like bride and groom 1 and 2 and then in-laws way down at the bottom?
Yes, yeah, it goes bride, groom, we're partners, and then it's mother of the bride, mother of the groom, and then everybody else. Every time. And it's so easy to do. It's you take a picture and then you just say, hey, that one's important, and you can reorganize them into, which one is the most important out of all of them.
So were there any other, because Drew, you spoke to a lot of the different autofocusing modes, and I know you had experience with these with your hands-on time with the R5 II. Is there anything specific that you, like any like niche sort of deep-cut combos of like autofocus modes or settings you specifically enable that really help you with your work?
I mean, I'm always on servo. You know, it's always tracking. And even when I'm self-filming, so that's something I do a ton, self-filming, and I can trust it to focus on me, as I move away from the camera. It's funny, my poor editors, every single video starts with my face, like right there, hitting record, and then walking back. And it just tracks me and keeps that way. And I can move around even in frame, and it will keep up with me, which is something I think a lot of people do, a lot of self-filming, and you have to be able to trust the autofocus to stay on point.
No, absolutely. Another thing that I believe now this is the most accessible price point this feature's come in on from Canon, the pre-release capture.
Pre-continuous shooting,
Or pre-continuous shooting, yes. That was also previously only in R5 II and R1. And so could you talk a little bit about what that offers?
So the R6 Mark II gave us raw burst capture, meaning you put the camera in raw burst mode, you shoot a raw burst, and you go back into the playback, and you select an image, and you pull that raw image down. What we did with the R6 III is we took the same pre-continuous shooting that we have R1, R5 II, you half press and hold. When you enable this, as you half press, it's continuously recording files in buffer, and then once you finally press down the shutter, it saved those last 20 images in that burst to the file. And then you just keep going. And as you get that 150 images, now you've got a huge amount of images to choose from, because sometimes you have that moment, especially in the sports world, you might have the quarterbacks coming back and you don't have this motion because you were off the button.
You're just a half second
You were just
behind,
a half
yeah.
second off. But if you're half pressing and focusing with the shutter, then you've got that action and it's right there. It's already in there. You can go backwards in time in a little bit and say, oh, I got that.
Yeah. And I mean, definitely with sports, but for weddings, there are some first kisses at weddings that are so fast. I've definitely totally missed a kiss before. I have, yeah, when it was just like that split second, but now that's a huge help.
This is completely unrelated to the camera, but what do you do when
do?
like if you don't have the
you
wonderful
Photoshop and you use the liquify and you go, meh. You got to do what you got to do. Nobody knows.
Why are her lips extending 3 inches away from her body? Oh, well, whatever. Now, another thing that's also improved, I believe, is the in-body image stabilization on this. Is this now, because I believe it's 7.5 stops in-body and then up to 8.5 with a coordinated lens. Is that the best you can get in a Canon body currently?
8.5 is the max you're going to see. And now, CIPA also, the CIPA, it's an industry basically standardization company that rates these for us. This isn't a Canon number. This is actually a rated number by CIPA. And we rate that with a specific lens, a specific setting with the electronic shutter. So yeah, it's extremely easy to hold these at slow shutter speeds. That, you go outside here in low light and do some traffic at 3 seconds and see how long you can hold the camera. That's competition for later today.
Yes.
Yeah, I did that at a wedding, actually, that I brought the camera because I love getting that like nice wide shot of the whole dance floor, and then everybody that's dancing is blurry, but then all the centerpieces and things are nice and crisp, and it performed beautifully. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we have gotten a lot more questions come in. I do also want to definitely talk about video because I got hands-on time with the C50, and I was shocked at how much this overlaps. One question, oh God, this is a very specific question, but maybe you can answer this. Arthur.Elias1 says, hi, could you confirm if the Canon R6 Mark III can record internally, I'm assuming RAW, while outputting clean HDMI and still keep the camera's display active for focus control? Putting you through the gauntlet. That might be a TBD answer, Arthur. I'll say that right now, but I was curious if you happen to have that in your back pocket.
Let me think about that one. I had to think that one through. So he's recording externally.
Recording internally, but we want a clean HDMI output on the full-size HDMI also.
In video, yes.
That plug-in. In video, yes. Okay.
Yeah, you get that clean HDMI out, then you record internally.
And still keep the camera's display active for focus control, or does it cut the display off?
Ooh, that's a TBD.
Okay.
I think it does keep it active on the LCD, but
on the LCD, not the EVF, I recall.
Not the EVF.
Gotcha. Right. And then, does the histogram stay on screen while recording, unlike the R6 II?
So that's a really good question, and that is one big thing with the R6 III, that when you're working in video and you hit that record button, you have a bunch of options that do stay live. Your waveform, your peaking, your level, your zebras, they all stay. Even if you punch in for focus check, punch in for zoom, that does stay while you're recording. So yes, the histogram, I believe the histogram actually drops out, but the waveform stays.
Gotcha. Okay, that's good to know. And actually, that's as good a segue as any into the video specs. Now, we already kind of hit the highlight ones. Once again, if any of you know the C50, a shocking amount of it perfectly overlaps. The OpenGate 7K recording, internal Canon RAW light as an option, 4K 120 frames per second uncropped, and Drew, I know we spoke about this, about the people who were really interested in the C50, but said no in-body image stabilization.
Right.
Well, now you have a camera body from Canon that has OpenGate recording with in-body image stabilization.
Exactly. So a few other things here. We have the slow and fast recording options. So now you can put it into that slow fast mode, choose your frame rates, and you can actually adjust that as you go. So you get that in camera also here, that we do also see in the C50. Now keep in mind, the C50 and this, like I said earlier, this is a stills focused versus video, and that's a video versus stills. But we do have a lot of functions here. You are going to have some additional things in C50. Your video codecs, you're going to have more options of your video codecs. You're going to have a few more menu items that are going to be more cinema related, if you will. The terminology is going to be very video based, right? You also have a cooling system in the C50 that this does not have.
Yes.
And I know the questions are, I guarantee you they're in there about the overheating and how much time can you record.
Yes.
So I'm going to preempt that a little bit. If you are in a 4K 60 standard, you basically can go unlimited heat. If you go 4K 60 fine, you got about 35 minutes of record time, because that is that oversampled from 7K. So it's a really high data rate file format. But a lot of the other formats, and we have a little chart for you that can tell you how far you can go, you can get unlimited record times on a lot of the options right now.
Yeah, it's really just the raw formats, the open gate, and like the really high frame rates.
Right.
But your standard like 4K, 24, 30, 60, that's all fine.
And that's part of that CF Express card. We've also built the internals of the architecture to be more thermal friendly, if you will. The internal architecture has pieces in there to pull heat away from the sensor and the LCD. So we've actually designed this to have some of those cooling features inside.
Awesome. And Vanessa, I was curious, is this the first camera body that you've used for your work where you had open gate recording as an option?
It is, yeah. It's the very first one.
And you were talking a little bit before we recorded, or before we started, on kind of how you were using that. Could you just kind of share like where you found it beneficial?
Yeah, for my purposes, I'm either using that open gate where I'm doing like talking head, or I'm doing some BTS for my clients, you know, whatever it is I'm shooting for them. And I just love the ability to be able to, you know, go from social format to YouTube format, because I need both. And then 4K 120 is the other thing I typically shoot with, because, I mean, yes, I'm a YouTuber, but I am by no stretch of the imagination like a cinematographer or can do that. But you know, 4K 120 is pretty forgiving, so I can pretty much shoot anything at 4K 120, and it's going to look incredible. My clients will be like blown away that I did that.
It's like the duct tape of a recording option.
Is.
Oh, were you shooting handheld? It's wobbly. It looks amazing in 4K. We got some hands-on time with B&H with the camera, and we shot in Central Park, and it was all like birds and squirrels and just the fastest-moving, smallest things. But you shoot 4K 120 on a 100 to 300 millimeter f2.8 lens. It's buttery, crispy, amazing. Looks great. But also, it is. I'm glad you also brought that up though earlier. That just also keep in mind the file sizes with OpenGate as well. Like it's a great tool, but you know, Canon gives you lots of options if you don't absolutely need all of that space. Because
right. Yeah. But, you know, memory cards are also getting less expensive. I mean, I threw a 1 terabyte CF Express card in there, and it was good for filming all that I needed to film all day and shoot.
Actually, so another question just came in from lowercase s, capital AD, lowercase, ADY, lowercase c. I need to upgrade from 5D Mark IV. I do weddings. Do you recommend the R6 III? I did not have time to check. I have all EF prime lenses. Money is not an issue, but I won't have something overkill. Okay, so I'm assuming looking for like a good bang for the buck.
Yeah.
Would you recommend?
So anyone that is already in that like 5D Mark IV, like this is the easiest learning curve transfer, in my opinion, from DSLR to mirrorless. So this is absolutely the one that I would recommend. And then it's just a $99 adapter, and you can use all of your EF lenses. But if money's not an issue, like let me just tell you. So first you get the RF 28 to 70 f2. Okay. That is like the god of all lenses for weddings and portraits, in my opinion. It's just so beautiful. And then you get the 135 1.2. Like those for weddings and portraits, those two lenses plus the R6 III, you're golden.
Because I'm sure, to who asked that question, if you've been shooting weddings and shooting for a while, you know this. But I mean, putting the money in the glass in front of the camera body, I would almost argue is like that's where a lot of the difference comes in.
It's what's the phrase? You date your bodies, you marry your lenses.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Another thing I do kind of want to talk about, because we've been kind of speaking about this lens for like a professional amateur or someone kind of stepping into this, but there's actually a lot of really good sort of beginner-friendly features in this camera as well. I wrote down a few cheat sheet ones, but even just things like if you're a beginner content creator, let's say,
Right.
there's a lot of color filters built in if you don't want to be grading raw footage, or skin smoothing effects. Could you kind of speak to some of those features?
So yeah, this camera actually does keep the special scene modes, which we've had on a lot of our cameras, even going down into the old Rebel series, that really help you. Maybe you're not a hobbyist and you're kind of getting into it. You want to do sports, but you're not quite sure how to set your camera up, or you're doing portraits and you don't quite know the special settings to get a blurred background. Mm-hmm. The scene modes will help automatically set those for you. It'll set for a wide open aperture or a fast shutter speed for sports. There's a lot in here for those scene modes, especially if you are doing YouTube videos and you're maybe a content creator and you're showing makeup or you're showing something, a product demo. You show them in the movie demo mode. It actually will focus on the product that you hold in front of your face. It will shift to the product and then go back to you as you set the product down. You don't have to think about, oh gosh, is it going to put me, or you don't have to do this little motion here and cover your face and look a little weird. But those are a lot of the features in that. We have a lot of unique color filters now that we've added to the video side too. They have some interesting names, like what was the one we were talking about earlier?
Oh, I will never forget it. Tasty Blue.
Tasty Blue.
Tasty Cool.
Tasty Cool.
Tasty Cool.
And Tasty Warm.
Yes.
So there's a lot of, I think there's 32 of some of those color filters that you can really play with and have a lot of fun with it, so you don't have to get into your editor, your NLE later on and go, okay, I have to grade all this. What do I do? You can kind of do it in camera. Mm-hmm. That's the easiest way to start, is let's do it in camera first, and then we can learn our editing later on.
So it's almost, so if you are a beginner and you have the budget, I would argue that this is a camera that can grow with you, because there's not a steep learning curve. It doesn't assume you have to know everything about photography. You get the tools to kind of start, but also if you are even a working professional, like, it still is giving you top tier specs as well, so that you can kind of like ease that curve.
It does, and that features, some of those features came from our R50V, our video-centric crop sensor body that moved into this. So we actually kind of took the top and bottom, R series 5 and 1, and the V series, and kind of went whoop into one little piece here for you. So you've got a lot going on in this.
And then just to kind of hit on some of the other specs here. Battery life, I can say from my experience, it was great. It's the LPE6P battery. Yes.
Correct.
The one with the white stripe.
Yes. It's so hard to memorize that. And that was very impressive in the C50 even.
Right.
Very impressive what you can get. And when we were shooting with this all day, battery life really wasn't an issue. Full-size HDMI port. We did get one question that came in on what are pro audio options other than the Tascam device?
The Tascam. So this does have the multifunction shoe, so you can put that Tascam device into the top here and get that XLR inputs.
Yep.
We do have mic input and headphone monitoring on this, but that's, again, where if you really need that higher level of audio, that's where a C50 comes in, because that handle on top has that built in.
Yes, and comes with it.
And comes with it. So those are the things that you start to manage. You go, ooh, I need this, but it's not. You have to go extra to get that here.
Gotcha. And now we can still bounce back to talk about the camera, but we should also note that you also came out with a new lens today.
We did.
45mm f1.2 STM.
Really a fun lens. It's funny when my team gets the specs on these things, we kind of look at it, we scratch our heads a little, and then we get in our hands and we're like, ooh. You
were kind of speaking to that, of like, it's a 45, does that make sense with the 50? But when you actually see the images, and also for the price point.
Exactly.
Like, it's a 1 point, it looked fantastic. Like, the image quality on this, coming from this lens. And we did a little comparison, I believe.
We did a little bit, yeah. It's a 1.2 45 millimeter lens. That 45 is actually closer to your human vision. It's about 47 millimeters on what you actually see. Yeah. So the 45 actually gets you a little closer to that. But a 1.2 aperture lens at $469 in that price point is pretty much unheard of.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yes.
So it has a character in that background. I think that we were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
The bokeh, the blur, it has that little pretty background, something
different.
about it.
There's something, painterly was how someone else described it. And I haven't shot with it yet, but I was looking at pictures and comparing them to like the 51.8, the 51.2.
Yeah.
And there really is something about the way that this lens, sees an image. And I think it's going to become almost trendy, it feels like.
It will.
It's an attractive quality that you can pick out.
And it's different. You say you compare it to a 51.2 L series, and that's a very tough comparison because that's a $2,400 some odd lens versus a 400. And this is not an L series lens. It's not weather sealed. It's meant to help those people that are getting into the craft, if you will, to learn what can they benefit from that 1.2 aperture. They might have a kit lens that's a 24 to 105 STM, or they might have a 51.8. That difference between 1.2 and 1.8. In that background blur is actually noticeable.
It is noticeable.
Yeah. And it's noticeable practically when we're shooting in low light.
Right.
That's a lifesaver sometimes.
Right.
No, absolutely. Another question that came in just kind of while we're talking about lenses, and we kind of answered this, and it's also a very subjective question, but how good are older EF lenses on this camera? I'm going to assume you're going to say great.
Well, they are great, but the second you compare it to an RF lens, it's like,
well, especially, like, I mean, EF, there's a massive library of EF lenses with amazing image quality, and you can absolutely adapt them, as we said earlier. But I would say, if you're going from like a DSLR, EF, Canon to like an RF, and you have an extensive lens library, don't throw them all away necessarily.
No, you got to be realistic, right? If you have an entire series of EF glass and you can start with this body and a lens, get the adapter. You don't lose any functionality. You really actually perform a little better because the way that this camera focuses, if you had a DSLR, of course, use your EF, you now have the entire focus area, the sensor area now becomes all of your focus points. You didn't have that before on your DSLR. So in a way, the EF lenses get a little better in your capability, in your composition. But like Vanessa said, we've designed the RF system specifically for these bodies, and they do work differently. They communicate to each other much, much better.
Another specific question from Alistair Weaver. If using pre-capture, can you still use back button focus?
So it's tied to the shutter button.
Okay.
Now, one good thing that I did see on this is we can quickly enable and disable the pre-capture through a quick button. So you can enable it, disable it very quickly through a customization. But it is tied to the shutter button. That's your half press. I've gotten to the point where I practice with focusing on back button because I know a lot of you out there are back button focusing and maybe triple back button focus. I see other trends out there, but you still use that shutter button as your half press to lock that in. And you can get a pretty good practice of focus. Okay, now I can actually pre-capture. Wait, nope, pre-capture now. And you can play with the buffer a little bit that way.
See, this is the conversation. I love getting lost in the sauce and like the hyper-specific. These are great questions.
I can take you for hours on that stuff.
We'll have an extended conversation.
We'll do that later.
No, we won't. Vanessa, I was curious, just kind of on this topic. Do you, just as a working professional who has done this for a very long time, kind of similar to that, like a specific back button or back focusing press thing, do you have any specific tricks you picked up on Canon bodies that like really help you in your workflow?
It's funny, when I was shooting with a DSLR, I did not use back button focus because I would take multiple pictures refocusing every time because you needed to just, like triple check that you got that 1.2 shot in focus. But now with the entire mirrorless lineup, I stayed that way because now I just hold it and let it track, and it just, it does it perfectly. I have so many 1.2 lenses, like back with my EF lenses, and I wouldn't ever really shoot them at 1.2 because it was really difficult to track and get that perfect focus on an eyeball. But now I always shoot my 1.2 lenses at 1.2 because it works. Yeah. Or my 135 at 1.8. And I would never use servo either. So if you're in a DSLR and you're looking to transfer to mirrorless, you get to use servo, and it works, and it's incredible. I think one of the biggest learning curves that's a pleasant learning curve from a DSLR to a mirrorless is you have to learn to trust your camera's focusing and realize that you don't have to overcome it. You have to work with it and almost let it work for you instead. But once you do, it's like, oh man, my client connection is so much better now because of these cameras, because even with like the LCD, a lot of times if I'm photographing kids especially, I'll have my camera here so I can eye contact and talk to them.
Gotcha.
Because I can just trust the focus to do what it needs to do. I don't have to be up here looking at it. And it's helped the whole client experience.
And that's a tricky thing to kind of quantify, because I feel like when a new camera comes out, people immediately like look at the spec comparison and say, oh, this number's bigger, this camera's better. But it's difficult to like quantify those things like an improved autofocus system and being able to trust that. Like those are those like slightly harder to categorize things that can absolutely make the difference, like from a working client perspective as well.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad you highlighted that. But going back to more technical questions, it's a good one. Brett Rowe-Fing video, which 4K file types can you dual record in full quality? Thank you for putting
record in...
Like
I'm
cards?
assuming, yeah, record to 2 cards at once, like redundancy.
Again, I think that's going to be up to your card, because your RAW format's going to go to your CF Express card. You're not going to be able to send that to your SD card.
So yeah, no RAW formats.
So no RAW formats, but I think pretty much anything that's going to give you beyond that will go to it. We have an entire matrix for you that says this resolution, this compression can go here. It's really hard to say off the bat, yes, you can do that, because you might set one of those settings. Okay, I'm going to do log 2, and I'm going to set this on there, and it won't go there. So we try and give as many options as possible, but just check that little reference chart in the manual and say it goes here.
So yes, Brett, consult the paperwork,
Yeah,
because obviously you'll be bottlenecked by the SD card.
The cards, yeah. So that's your big thing.
Having like a V90 card is something I always do just to make sure that it's
Don't use the memory card that you bought at the local drugstore down the street. That's not going to do it.
No.
Sean L. Porter Photography asks, I believe we kind of addressed this, but Sean, in case you came into this conversation later, it's another question about the screen on the R6 III. When you attach a monitor via HDMI, will the screen go black? We did kind of answer this, but just kind of to reiterate in case some people missed it.
Yeah, for in the movie modes, you're able to connect that HDMI and keep it on your monitor and the LCD on the back. And still mode is going to, if you are doing that, because I know a lot of people want to do that for instruction, things like that, it does not allow you to have both running at the same time.
Gotcha. Won't read the full username, but another user asked, are there any APS-C style crop modes for video?
So there's a lot of options that you can do here. So yes, we do have APS-C. You can do an APS-C crop mode. You do have 4K 60, 4K 120. You can drop into a lot of different resolutions for that. And again, it's a ton of options for you. So we try and give you as many as possible with this. It's just a matter of how do you want to set the camera up to make it fit those specific resolutions and compression rates.
Gotcha. And then, by far my favorite question we've gotten so far, can you ask that guy where he got that burgundy jacket? I want one.
It really is the best jacket, Drew.
It is. We were all admiring it before the stream started.
I kind of have a feeling that might be from one of the guys in the office.
Do you work with Cute Platypus? Is that your...
I could not even tell you a name where this is. This was one of a local men's shop in Huntington here on Long Island. So I honestly, I would give them a shout out, but I don't know who they are.
Oh no!
It's my wife. Trust me, it's all the wife.
Yeah. Another question: How would a buyer choose between R5 Mark II and this camera? And I think you were speaking to that as well.
That is such.
It's tough because obviously with the R5 II you're getting higher megapixel sensor, you're getting other advantages, you're getting the Digic X accelerator. Yes. But kind of from someone who's used them both, I'm curious what you would say.
Well, what I would say is what I do, and I have both.
By one means.
That is the correct answer. Buy
the correct answer is both. It's a tool, right? You have to think about what are you practically going to use. If you definitely need that higher, 45 megapixels, then great. Then you know that R5 II is going to be for you. If you need that Digic X processor, then you know that's going to be for you. But other than those two things, I feel like this new camera really, how I put it, is it kind of steps on the toes of that R5 II in a lot of ways. So, if you specifically need those two things, I would say. And the eye control autofocus. If you really like the eye control autofocus in the R5 II, which is a beautiful thing. I use
That
it.
was crazy the first time I tried
really
that.
good.
It was like witchcraft.
It's so good. So those three things I think would probably push you towards that R5 II use case scenario. Otherwise, the R6 III is probably the answer.
Yeah. And even compared, like, the R6 II also, if you don't need the 32 megapixel sensor, the R6 II is still compelling. But if you are a true hybrid video shooter as well, I would argue the R6 III really brings a lot more to the table. Once again, it rivals the C50 in a lot of ways. Yeah. So if you were even looking at that.
Well, because the R5 II doesn't have open gate.
Does not.
Does not.
So if that, I mean, that's a big one. That's a big one for me. And anyone doing video, I think, really.
Yeah, no, it's a really good option. Well, I'm trying to think if there's any other, see if any other questions come in. But otherwise, Drew, is there anything else feature-wise that you wanted to highlight that we didn't chat about that Canon's very proud of?
I did want to call on something because we talked about the sensor read speed. Someone asked about the
readout speed.
The readout speeds and the specs, and I can't really say what the readout speed is. However, when you look at the read speed of this sensor, and you consider that it is 34% larger in resolution at 32 compared to the R6 II. The read speed is actually just a little faster, off, kind of the same, but it's a higher resolution sensor. So in a way, this is going to be a faster sensor than what we see in the R6 II. I know that's not really a marketing question around it, but it's more of a realization of the sensor is technically faster because it is reading all of that resolution faster. So
yeah.
That gives you a little bit more of an understanding of the sensor speed itself.
And then I suppose, actually, the most important question is, when will people be able to get their hands on it?
Really good question. November 25th for the camera itself will be available for you guys here. The lens comes December 3rd. There are 3 different components or 4 different builds for the body, whether it's body and lens, 2 different lens configurations. There's body by itself, and then there's the body with the stop motion animation for you Dragon Frame software users out there that are doing stop motion.
Yep.
And then the lens, of course, is lens by itself.
So November 25th?
November 25th.
Very good timing.
Very close.
Good timing.
Get your Christmas
for the
presents
photographer in your life.
Exactly.
Actually, we did get one last question come in, and I think it's worth addressing before we bounce off. A lot of talk about wedding photography. How does the Mark II compare to the Mark III for wildlife photography?
Good question.
That is a really good question. Yeah. I mean, for wildlife, just having the pre-continuous shooting is big. Getting like birds flying off.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And that extra resolution, trust me, I've done the bird stuff. I'm out there all the time, taking eagles and birds and all that. Any resolution I can get is going to give me another bump. That 32 is going to be a nice sweet spot for us. Again, I know everyone's out there going, I need more, I need more, I need more. Sometimes you just don't have a big enough lens. There is that capability, the budget versus the capability. So moving to a 32 could actually get you that extra little...
Oh, yeah. No, and I've taken pictures on 100 megapixels sensor cameras, and the image is gorgeous, but then when you have to file manage, like I made a terrible mistake. Each one of these photos is giant, and 32 megapixels, I think, is, as you said, kind of a Goldilocks.
A Goldilocks.
And I don't know, for me, that's kind of the running theme of this camera. It's very good at just about everything, and not really, doesn't have an obvious weak spot in any specific point. It's kind of just like the default camera. If you are you can justify it if you're a dedicated photographer or a video shooter, but if you're a hybrid shooter, I think in any way, shape, or form, I don't see what it will leave you wanting.
It fits as a jack of many, many trades. I'm not going to say all trades because, sometimes it's just, you got to go to something else. You got to go to R1. You got to go to a R50V, whatever. But it does so many things. Look at it and see, how does it improve what I'm doing now? If you're looking at an R6 II, if you have an R6 II, it's going to be one of those conversations you have to have internally yourself and go, all right, what am I going to get out of this, and do I use those features? The answer is yes, then take a look at it. If you're an RP type user or even a DSLR user, there's a lot to absorb.
Oh yeah, because there's been a whole, almost decade of, when was the first RF? mount?
2018.
2018.
Oh,
So
wow, yeah.
So if you're jumping in now, you are in for a treat. So I guess, on that note, November 25th, you'll be able to get your hands on it. And you should obviously get a Paybu card and either finance it or save the tax on that. Just a little shameless plug in there for B&H. But otherwise, Vanessa and Drew, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about your experiences with the camera, share some information. Really looking forward to getting to play with it again. I believe you mentioned you might be able to play with it a little bit sooner. I'm very jealous of you.
Yes, tomorrow, in fact, on a
amazing.
real wedding.
Stealing my camera again.
I am. Drew's very nice. He gives me all the cameras.
All the toys. And once again, thank you both for lending your expertise, and thank you everyone for watching, and thank you for the great questions. Make sure to check B&H's website for when the camera's available on the 25th. And until next time, I'm Nick with B&H, and we'll see you next time. Take care.